Welcome to Intelligent Human Leadership, leading yourself and your team. Do you ever find yourself grappling with a lack of confidence in your team? Or battling the relentless waves of concern and fear? Are the pressures to meet client expectations and the burden of missed opportunities weighing you down? On this podcast, you'll discover the strategies and insights that will reignite your team's morale and help you find the harmony and knowledge you seek to propel your business forward. Here, we explore innovative ways to reignite your creative spirit and achieve greatness, empowering you to lead with intelligence, compassion, and resilience. If you're ready to dive deep into your core of leadership challenges and be guided toward success, here's your host, founder of Steward Your Business, David Carr.
All right, welcome back to the Intelligent Human Leadership Podcast. I am so glad you're here, you guys. We are jumping into a continued conversation on balancing these short-term and long-term goals we've talked about the last couple episodes. If you've missed those, please go back and listen to them. You're still going to get value here. We're going to talk about some core concepts, but we talked about balancing the urgent and the important. We all have these short-term goals, long-term goals. A couple episodes back on episode 27. And then we talked about incorporating power, that feedback of being proactive, you getting that feedback, right? And so I'm excited to break this down further with you guys into ways we can balance the urgent and important. And there's no greater time than right now. I'm recording here at the beginning of July. So we've covered the first half of the year, first half of 2024. So hopefully you've made some great progress in your goals and your objectives. And we're going to, look at the next month and the months to come as we go into Q3 and Q4. And so again, if you're not on target, if you're off, that's okay. This is a great time to realign, to get you in place. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. The drift is real. I go through that. And I know many of my colleagues do. And that's why I started Steward Your Business as a way to helping those organizations and individuals get back on track together. Whole point here is to make sure you're that most intelligent human leader, healthy, prepared, ready to face the challenges that come with your team. And so we're going to dive in there and we're going to go through an element that I've talked about in previous podcasts and kind of highlighted, particularly on episode 27, where we talked about this initial concept. But two areas that we're going to cover today is called the core and the code. When we look at balancing the short-term and long-term goals, the things that are hitting us, day in and day out, and oftentimes those are the short-term goals, but there are things that we need to keep making progress on the long-term goals. If you don't have a solid foundation on your understanding of what I call your core for those of you that like to do the tracking and make sure you're on alignment with this, you can download the Warrior app. Happy to share a link with you. It's absolutely free where you can start to track, am I in alignment with my values? So what I equate core or core values to is what is important to you? What do you prioritize in your life? What are the principles that run your life? And I use what I call the core for domains. You could have more, but these are great umbrella domains for me. And it's worked for tens of thousands of men and women that I've worked with and been a part of through Wake Up Warrior, which I'm certified and bring that training to you through Steward Your Business and through Steward Yourself program. So all that being said, what is that? What is the core for? Well, the core for is 4 domains. We look at our physical body. We look at our being, that's our spiritual walk. We look at our balance, which is all of our relationships, our marriages, our relationship with our children, our coworkers, and we look at our business. So if you use those 4 domains, you say, I value my business or wealth and money and finances, and I value my relationships with my wife, my children. Those are important to me. I value my spiritual walk, my connection to God, my spiritual peace. I value and I take care of my body. Now, here's the trick. When you look at all these things, some people, you say they value all of those things, but you look at the results of their life and you realize, man, they have an amazing body, but their relationships are really deteriorated, or they've really made it in business. They're super financially set. They have all these businesses or team members, but they have no spiritual walk. They have no spiritual connection. They have no peace. And so what happens is, we can get out of alignment very easily. For those of you who like to go to the chiropractor, which I do, not as often as I probably need to, we get out of alignment. It just naturally occurs. The way we sit, the way we move, this is the way our world works. We're in a world of entropy, if you're familiar with that term. Things are breaking down constantly. And so we constantly have to build back up or refocus. And so what happens is, this is a natural tendency where all of us have a drift, and all of us can move from these principles or values if we're not careful in returning back and understanding them and reincorporating them and focusing them in our lives. So number one, do you even understand and identify what those are? And so, the core, if you will, is reflecting on what matters most. And we'll dive more into this about how you can do a little more on core values. The other thing we're going to talk about is the code. It's really the guideline of how do you live your life. So it's one thing is like, what's my foundation and what guides me on this, and my actions and decisions. And the code for me is one that I've adopted from the Wake Up Warrior program as well, is simply tell the truth. I know it sounds simple, but the reality is we all lie. As much as we want to admit that we don't, we all do. I do, unfortunately. And I would say there's more lies of omission than there are commission, meaning there's lies of things we don't say versus the things we overtly say and express. And so here's the reality is we have to understand that and get back into alignment again. Where are we off target in the rules and the ways we live our lives, where we're out of integrity, we're out of commitment, and it's not getting us where we want to be. So this is all to help you be that most intelligent human leader, to make sure you're making progress, moving toward your goals, having the impact that you really want. I can tell you at 50 years young, I've learned a lot over the course of my career and relationships and my spiritual walk and even my physical body. And I know where I'm out of alignment. I need to move back more quickly. Today, I can make those moves and those pivots quicker than I ever have in the past and start to make that transformation that is really meaningful to me. So we're going to dive a little more in here in the podcast, but I wanted to give you that foundation understanding as we address the core and the code as two foundational frameworks to help you move in making progress in your life. I don't want you to get stuck. There's so many ways we're getting stuck and sidelined here. Again, if you're leading a company or you're leading individuals, think about this and where you're getting hung up. They're not going to follow somebody as effectively. You're not going to have the influence if you're not living this way. I can tell you from my experience where I was out of integrity, where I wasn't leading well in this. And at times, we'll go into the core here. There was times I wasn't even clear on what were the values of the company, or truly what were all of my values. To be honest with you, it's easy to kind of blame the company or the external and then say, well, what are your values? What's important to you? What really matters to you? Does your family really matter? Maybe not. Does money matter to you? Maybe not. Most of these, things are different for different people. Do you have to have, 10% body fat, 6-pack abs? Maybe that is important to you or not, but maybe it's just meaning I don't want to be overweight. I don't want to have cancer. I don't want to have diseases. It's different for different people. So I want to make sure that your values are clear for you, and number one, and assure that your daily actions align with them. So what I do in this is I use an app, absolutely free. You can download it, send me a message directly. I'll send it to you. That I use called the Warrior app, where you can track how are you showing up in your core 4. And I've talked about this in previous podcasts, so please go back and check it out. I've talked about gratitude and ways we can show up and all the different domains there. But the foundational understanding here in the podcast is, do you even understand what those core values are for you? Can you articulate them? And then how does that line up for you? Now, for business, let's just use that because we're focusing primarily here on Steward Yourself. Is helping you show up well in your business, either the business owner, the leader, director, department head, group manager, whatever the title you have here is. This will impact how you interact with your team and your clients and how you lead them. What do you values? Do you have shared values and understanding? Hopefully you do, but there may be at odds where you don't with a client. And so again, the client says, I want you to finish this project or get this done. I've had this, for example, at the County of Riverside I used to work with. I would get clients all the time, or applicants it would come to me as a ecological restoration or ecological specialist. I would look and be asked to, hey, prioritize this project. This is important. This is my project. And I agree, it is important to them. However, there was other people ahead of them. And so if I prioritize their project, let's just say, and getting that deliverable done at the expense of others that weren't saying anything, but they were in the queue and they were doing all that they were supposed to do, I would be doing a disservice, in my opinion, to those that already done, paid all their money, put everything in, got everything submitted, and I'm reviewing in a timely manner. So you could be swayed, unfortunately, to do things that aren't in alignment with your core values because you have external forces putting upon you. And if you're not clear about that, that could get you into trouble. Because what in reality is, if I did that, for example, maybe the person didn't say it before me, but then if I have somebody down the line, they're like, why am I so delayed? And I say, well, and again, if I'm telling the truth, living the code, and I say, well, I chose that, well, that's on me, and it's at their expense, and I don't want to be out of integrity with what I say and what I'm committed to. So I have to talk to and say the hard truth to the person and say, look, hey, I understand you want to get this done, and I'm working as best as I can, as diligently as I can. Here's my workload. Here's the things I'm telling you. I'm giving you an estimated update. And kind of tongue in cheek, I would say, maybe not say directly to them, but, even if they said, well, can you prioritize mine over the others? And I said, well, you know what? I can prioritize yours over the others if those other people allow and say they're willing to forego their place in line, if you will. And if you want to talk with those individuals and ask them, again, tongue in cheek, saying, yeah, but the idea here is, are you living in integrity with the code and the core and the values you have? And so the code is, again, this foundational understanding of being real, raw, relevant, and getting the results that you want. We're not looking for surface stuff. We're not looking for you to manipulate or be passive aggressive or any of that kind of stuff. We want you to just be honest, tell the truth about where you're at, the facts. One of the things for me personally that I struggle with when people tell me this is my truth. I'm not worried about your truth. I'm worried about the facts. What are the facts? What are the reality we're dealing with? Because when I hear my truth, I hear I hear a misunderstanding or a misread. What we want to get to is, for me, truth is irrelevant of what I call it to be. What I want to get to is the facts. The facts do change. Facts do shift. And so what I want you to get clear on was, what are the facts right now? What are the realities? And there's no guilt and shame here. It's just a matter of where you're at right now. And so what happens is, if I ask you about where we're at on a deliverable, let's just say, right? Be honest and be real as to where you're at and what the likelihood is to get this done on a given time. It doesn't do us any good to predicate that on falsehoods or misinformation. Again, lies of omission. Well, he didn't ask me about, is there going to be figures and maps included with this deliverable too? It's just the text. And so I just said, okay, yeah, I could get that done by said time. But not realizing there's other components or other people need to review this and other things. So they're not going to actually get this deliverable, for example, in the right time, because you're not telling the total truth. You're telling partial truths. And so, again, remember, the code guides your actions. It's the rules that you live by. Not only the rules you live by, but when you show this and you put it out there, you're you're telling other people, you're demonstrating other people, hey, this is the rules I play by. And if you want them, if it cuts both ways here. It can, you can win sometimes, and you can also lose sometimes when people are playing this way as well. And they're like, oh, well, you're adjusting your rules, let me adjust my rules. And so, if you're not reviewing the rules that you live by and staying aligned here, and what I say is, what I've learned over the course of many years and why I incorporate the Wake Up Warrior system into my coaching and offer this to clients, is to guide you through this. Are you being real, truly where you're at with your emotions, your experiences? Are you being raw? Meaning, can you pull away the layers, right? And and then not only be raw and real, but then be relevant. How is this, now that we peeled it back, how is this getting us to where we were at, and where do we want to go? And then ultimately, this will lead us into getting us really what we want. I'm telling you, and as you live this, you become freer. That's what I want you to be here in the Intelligent Human Leadership Podcast, is to become free, to not be tangled and tied down with all the things of the world, because you have had lives of omission, you have unclear values, and so what's guiding and directing you is off. It's you're if you've ever used your phone, right, for navigating somewhere, right? I don't know about you guys, but I have this thing where sometimes the GPS is off and it tells you to move your phone around, right, and to recalibrate it. Well, the reason why is because it's foundationally off. The signals that are coming in and how it's receiving and interpreting in that is off. So here's something that's man-made, created, that we all pretty much have in our pocket, is a cell phone, right? And it gets off. And as much as the greatest technology and all of these things, and here we are, human beings, we're doing all these things, we've got all these different inputs and things. And the reality is, we're all going to get put off at some point. We're all going to be out of integrity with the code that we live our lives and the rules that we live by. Our values are going to be compromised. And the reality is, we are then not going to make smart short-term and longer-term decisions, particularly the longer-term decisions that will have potentially ramifications that will go on for years and years. Whether you guys know, I've been reading perhaps the Bible in a year chronologically, and I talked about this in the last couple episodes, episode 26. You can go back to Transforming Knowledge into Wisdom. But the reality is, as I read that, and I was reading through First Kings this morning, is you have these kings and their sons, and they repeat the same dang problems and decision making that causes damage to their people. The way they rule is ineffective. They're at war. And so it's like, man, if we continue to perpetuate these ways of thinking and don't get it cleared up, how much that reverberates. And so I don't want that for you in the way that you lead your teams, the way that you show up in your families, right? I'm raising a 15-year-old son. It's super important. That's why I've talked about in the past why I'm involved with different organizations, to make sure that men in particular are leading a life and being focused and productive. And in fact, I'll just throw this in here. For those of you that are in Southern California, August 17th, I'll be hosting a Mountain Men Summit here in the San Bernardino Mountains. And if you'd like more on that, let me know. We're going to bring men together and making sure that they understand their superpowers and how they're showing up to serve their local community. Would love to hear from you on that. All that being said here, we want you to be integrity, living the code and living in the core. So you've heard me talk about these fundamental principles here in the episode. I want to dive deep, a little bit deeper here in some practical tips as we're going through here. Again, I can't solve all these things in the podcast, but I want to give you some nuggets and things to think about. Is, use the code again to make these quick, value-driven decisions that address immediate needs. Live in the truth, right? Live in the facts of reality and make a foundational understanding of, okay, I'm going to live this way. And if there's something off, I'm going to address it. So I'll give you an example. This happened early on in my career. We were just starting to use computers. I'd always had just my own individual computer connected to a network. And I was going in looking for things, and I made I accidentally deleted files. And then I'm like, I had to make a decision. Do I not say anything? Because I don't want to be blamed, right? Or do I own up to it and then figure out how to get the problem solved? Well, I owned up to it. I spoke up right away. I didn't know what I was doing, and I felt guilty. I felt ashamed. I felt like, man, I just completely blew it. I don't know what I'm doing. I literally had been there probably at work for maybe a month or two. And so I had to own it. And who do I talk to? I didn't even know who to talk to. I think I said, my boss, I said, hey, I went to do these files. I don't know what happened. I don't know how to get them back. Anyways, they were able to restore them. They got them back, thankfully. But, if I didn't say anything, no, I would be out of integrity. And then I'm like, I don't want to get blamed, right? Well, it was my fault. I need to own it, if you will. And then, look at another thing is important that I've really learned from my previous company I was with recently. where the owner, Angela and DePauli, a part of Vargas Environmental Consulting, one thing we really did was we spent a lot of time creating our values, and we did strategic planning every year so that we could ensure that our values informed our long-term and strategic planning goals. This annual practice and then regular review was so important. In fact, we actually created a whole set of values and statements, and then employees could reward or identify people that were living in those things, making sure that we're moving in those goals. So there's some ways you can incorporate this into your culture. We call them Vargas bucks, where people would nominate somebody and say the value that they were living and making sure that we're moving in that direction. And so as a leader, you can come up with all different ways as either the business owner or a group manager. There's ways that you can identify and recognize how to support your team in this. But if they don't understand what the core values are, what's important within the company, and you don't regularly reinforce them, I like to say, I don't tell my wife I love her once. It's a daily thing, an affirmation as to what's important and how she's a priority. And again, that's why I talk about the core four, why I use that core four framework to track how I'm showing up on a daily and weekly basis to see where I'm off, where am I drifting, am I taking care of my body, am I taking care of my business, am I taking care of my spiritual walk, am I taking care of my relationships, my balance. And so are you looking at all those things, or are you out of alignment, out of sync? For those of you who like to invest, which I do, like in the stock market, you have certain stocks that do better than other ones that don't do as well. And so there's a point sometimes that they call a recalibration, if you will, where you're like, oh, you know what, we're out of sync. We're weighted too far in one area than another. And so you need to look at that and decide if we need to shift. And here's the thing too, sometimes, not always, but sometimes values or principles, not so principles, but they can be shifted, in meaning that we want to add something in, or we want to refine one. And so if you're struggling with that, I can walk you through a deeper process on how to refine and get clear on your core values and what those need to look like and how those support your mission and your vision. So again, reach out to me, hence the podcast here, to help you, give you tools and resources to be that most intelligent human leader for yourself and for your team. So if again, you're looking at these things, I want to encourage you, and I appreciate you guys listening here on the podcast. We're going to dive deeper into the other elements we've covered here. We want you to make sure that you take regular time and reflect on your core values. And this is a great opportunity. As you've listened to this podcast, hopefully you've jotted some down that come to mind for you. And again, take some time. Go write some values down. And if you need a resource, I've got other resources. Just reach out to me, David at stewardyourbusiness.com, or go to the website, stewardyourbusiness.com. Of course, you guys can follow and connect with me on all the different social platforms, LinkedIn, and all those things. But make sure your team understands this, the code and the core that you live by. What are the core values? What do we live by? What is our foundation understanding for making decisions? How do we show up? What's the rules we live by? We all have policies and procedures. Don't get me wrong. Those are good. And I think it's great to have written ones. But, I want you to be encouraging you to not only look and point them to the written ones, but speak out to them, share them, find opportunities within the organization, being in a team meeting, highlight a value, highlight and highlight and acknowledge those individuals that are living this way. And when somebody doesn't, call them in one-on-one. If you need help with how does that look like, what does that meeting look like, how does that conversation go, reach out to me. That's what I help guide, mentor you on. Look for feedback. We talked about this in the last episode. Be proactive to assess whether or not you're living by this. Again, the Warrior app is one way that I've learned and incorporated as a certified trainer myself. I can give you access to that. And be ready to adapt and evolve. We need to be innovative. We need to look what's it being effective, how we're showing up on our short-term and long-term priorities. And there's always competing demands. There's always competing facts. And I want to make sure that you are being that most intelligent human leader in making the decisions, charting the course for you and your organization. So here we've talked about the code and the core, how it profoundly affects your ability to address these short-term and long-term flexibility challenges that are facing you in particularly the AEC industry, whether you're in architecture, engineering, construction, environmental consulting, or beyond. I know all these different challenges that you're facing. I've lived it, I know it, and I want to help you. So if you found this podcast helpful and insightful, please leave a review. A 5-star review would be great. Comment, share, like. That is all really helpful for me. But also, let's have a one-on-one conversation. Let's not have you go it alone, and learn from what I've learned over the course of my decades in working in this field and applying this and spending tens of thousands of dollars on myself to help this, so that you can benefit from that for just a fraction of the price, and investing in yourself so that you can be that most intelligent human leader. Until next time, thank you for listening. I'm so grateful for you guys, and we'll talk soon. Be that intelligent human leader. Thanks, everybody.